I, 27M, need to get this out because what happened over the past 3 months is the most insane sequence of events I've ever been part of. And I was right in the middle of it by choice. So my best friend Harrison, 28M, had been with Megan, 26F, for almost 4 years. They moved in together 2 years ago into a place Megan's parents helped them get. Her dad, Candace, co-signed the lease because Harrison's credit was still recovering from some old medical bills. That detail matters later. Harrison treated this girl like she was everything. He worked overnight shifts at a distribution warehouse so Megan could finish her certification program during the day without stressing about rent. The guy was running on 4 hours of sleep for months and never complained once. I watched him do it. I'm Fletcher, by the way, and Harrison has been my closest friend since we were 14. Around last October, Megan started acting different. She stopped coming to our group hangouts on weekends. And when Harrison would mention her, she'd apparently be at Nicole's place. Nicole, 27F, was Megan's best friend from her certification program, and at first, none of us thought anything of it. But then Harrison started mentioning that Megan was being weird about her phone, always keeping it face down, leaving rooms to take calls. Classic stuff that you read about on here 1,000 times, right? Harrison brought it up to her directly around Halloween, and she told him he was being paranoid, that Nicole was going through a breakup and needed support, and that she didn't appreciate being interrogated after a long day. Harrison believed her. Because that's what Harrison does. He trusts people until they give him a concrete reason not to. I told him something felt off, but I also didn't have proof, so I let it go. Then, in early December, I was at Nicole's birthday party, this rooftop thing at a bar downtown, and I noticed Megan spending a lot of time talking to this guy Anton, 28M. I knew Anton was Megan's ex from before Harrison. They'd dated for about a year in college, and Megan had always described it as a toxic situation she was glad to be out of. But at this party, they were standing way too close. And at one point, I saw Anton put his hand on the small of her back while they were talking near the railing. I told Harrison what I saw the next day. He confronted Megan, and she lost it on him, said I was trying to ruin their relationship, that Anton just happened to be at Nicole's party because Nicole's cousin invited him, and that Harrison needed to stop listening to me. That fight lasted 3 days. Megan told Harrison that if he didn't trust her, then maybe they needed space. Harrison, being Harrison, apologized. He actually apologized to me too, said he shouldn't have brought it up the way he did. I just nodded because what else could I do at that point? Fast forward to January. This is where everything changes. Nicole had a group chat on WhatsApp with Megan and a few other girls from their program. Nicole's younger sister was borrowing Nicole's iPad one night to watch something, and she saw the WhatsApp notifications popping up on screen. She wasn't trying to snoop. She told me later she just saw Megan's name in a message preview that said something about Anton, and she tapped it out of curiosity. What she found in that chat was devastating. Megan had been sleeping with Anton since at least November. The messages were detailed. Dates, locations, inside jokes about Harrison not noticing. But the part that made me see red was when Nicole's sister scrolled further and found messages where Megan was openly mocking Harrison. She called him boring, said he had no ambition, said the only reason she stayed was because the apartment situation was convenient and her dad would be angry if she broke the lease. Multiple girls in the chat were responding with laughing emojis. Nicole herself wrote that Harrison was a nice guy but kind of a loser, and that Megan deserved someone who actually matched her energy. Anton was apparently exciting, spontaneous, and everything Harrison wasn't. Nicole's sister, and I owe this girl everything, screenshotted the entire conversation, pages and pages of it. She sent them to me through Instagram because she knew I was Harrison's best friend. She'd found my profile through Nicole's tagged photos. I sat in my truck in a parking lot outside a gas station and read every single message. Every one. I didn't tell Harrison right away. I know that sounds wrong, but I needed to think. Because this wasn't just about showing him the screenshots and watching him cry. Megan's father, Candace, was on that lease. Megan's family had already made it clear at multiple dinners that they thought Harrison was beneath their daughter. Her mom had made comments about his job. Her brother had joked about his car. They tolerated him because Megan seemed happy, but the underlying attitude was always there. And now I had proof that Megan and her entire social circle felt the same way. I called Harrison that Thursday night and told him to come over. When he got to my apartment, I showed him everything on my phone, every screenshot, scrolling slowly so he could read each message. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he looked at me and said he wanted to make every single one of them regret what they said. Not just Megan, not just Anton, all of them. And I told him I'd already been thinking about exactly how to do that. That was the night we started planning, and what we came up with I'll get into that in the update because this is already long. But I need you guys to understand something. Harrison didn't want to just leave. He didn't want to quietly move out and ghost her. He wanted Megan, Anton, Nicole, and Megan's family to understand exactly what they did and feel the weight of it. And honestly, after reading those messages, so did I. Update coming soon. And yeah, it gets so much worse for them. Everybody knows a Harrison, the guy who'd light himself on fire to keep someone else warm and then apologize for the smoke. Overnight warehouse shifts on 4 hours of sleep so she can study stress-free. And his reward is being called paranoid when he spots the most textbook red flags in history. And Megan flipping, "I saw your ex touching you," into, "Maybe we need space." That's emotional hostage-taking with a chess rating. Fletcher catches her red-handed, and somehow Harrison ends up apologizing to Fletcher. That's not love, that's conditioning. Nicole's little sister, though, absolute MVP. Screenshotted everything, tracked down Harrison's best friend through tagged photos like a junior intelligence operative. Give this girl a medal. And the group mockery is where this goes from bad to genuinely evil. No ambition. This man is destroying his body for her. Nicole calling him kind of a loser, while actively enabling the affair. Nicole, you are helping demolish a human being, but he's the loser. And when Harrison finally reads everything and goes quiet and then says he wants all of them to feel it, that's the moment. Quiet people don't snap randomly. They engineer. Update 1. All right, I'm back. A lot of you wanted to know what Harrison and I planned, and I promise we're getting there, but I need to walk you through what happened next because the situation got way more complicated before we even got to execute anything. So after that Thursday night at my apartment, where Harrison read all the screenshots, we spent the whole weekend going through them again and mapping out who said what. And here's something I didn't mention in the original post. Harrison was still living with Megan. He went home that Friday morning and acted completely normal. Cooked dinner for them Saturday night, watched a movie with her on the couch, the whole thing. He told me later that sitting next to her while knowing everything she'd said about him in that chat was the hardest thing he'd ever done. But he understood that the second she knew he'd seen those messages, her family would circle around her and we'd lose any leverage. Because Megan's family operated like a unit. Her dad, Candace, her mom, her older brother. If one of them got threatened, they all showed up. Harrison had watched it happen when Megan's brother got into a dispute with his landlord 2 years ago. The whole family drove over and made a scene until the landlord backed down. Harrison knew that energy would be pointed directly at him the moment Megan felt exposed, so we needed to be smart about timing. The first thing we figured out was the lease situation. Harrison had been paying rent every single month. His name was on the lease alongside Megan's, with Candace as co-signer. But here's what Megan apparently didn't realize or didn't care about. Harrison had every single payment receipt saved. Bank transfers, confirmation numbers, all of it. 4 years of being called a loser with no ambition. And the guy had a more organized filing system than most accountants. He also realized something critical when he reread the lease agreement that week. Candace had co-signed, which meant Candace was financially tied to that apartment. If Harrison stopped paying his share and the lease went into default, it wouldn't just affect Megan. It would hit Candace's credit directly. That wasn't our plan yet, but knowing it was there changed everything about how much power Harrison actually had in this situation. While Harrison was playing house, I was dealing with a separate problem that nobody saw coming. Nicole's sister, the one who sent me the screenshots, texted me the following Monday in a panic. Nicole had noticed that messages in the group chat had been marked as read on her iPad at a time when she wasn't home, and she was grilling her sister about it. Nicole's sister denied everything, but Nicole wasn't buying it, and she told Megan that someone might have seen the chat. This was exactly what we didn't need. If Megan found out the screenshots were out there before we were ready, she'd go to her family. They'd get ahead of the narrative, and Harrison would be painted as the villain somehow. I've seen it happen. The person who gets cheated on ends up being the bad guy because they invaded privacy or couldn't handle the truth. I told Harrison we needed to accelerate part of the plan. Originally, we were going to wait until the lease renewal came up in March, but Nicole getting suspicious forced our hand on something else entirely. See, there was another layer to this that I haven't gotten into yet. Anton, Megan's ex who she'd been sleeping with. Anton wasn't just some random guy from her past. Anton worked at the same company as Megan's brother. Same department, same team. Megan's brother had actually been the one who helped Anton get the job 2 years ago, which meant Megan's family knew Anton was back in Megan's orbit and apparently had no problem with it. When Harrison and I pieced that together from the group chat messages, where Megan mentioned her brother joking about Anton coming to a family barbecue, It became clear that this wasn't just Megan cheating. Her family had been quietly endorsing it, or at the very least looking the other way, because they'd always preferred Anton over Harrison. That realization changed Harrison. Before, he was angry at Megan and hurt by the chat messages. After we figured out the family angle, he wasn't just hurt anymore. He was done with every single one of them, and he wanted them to know it on his terms. So here's what we did first. Harrison reached out to the apartment management company directly, not Candace, not Megan, the actual management office, and requested a copy of the full lease agreement and all associated documents, including the cosigner terms. He told them he was considering his options because of a potential change in living arrangements. They sent everything over within a few days. Harrison now had documented proof of every financial obligation tied to that lease, who was responsible for what and what the early termination penalties looked like. The early termination fee was significant, 2 months' rent plus forfeiture of the security deposit. And because Candace co-signed, that penalty would fall on Candace if Harrison and Megan both walked away. But we weren't done with just paperwork. Harrison also started quietly moving his valuables out of the apartment. Not clothes, not obvious stuff, but his gaming setup, his toolkit that was worth over $1,000, important documents, and a few pieces of furniture that were definitively his, because he had the purchase receipts. He moved everything to my spare bedroom over the course of a week while Megan was at her program during the day. She didn't notice because Harrison strategically took things from the second bedroom and the garage storage unit first. Meanwhile, I was keeping tabs on the Nicole situation. Her sister told me Nicole had calmed down and decided she must have accidentally left WhatsApp open on the iPad herself. Crisis averted, for now. But the clock was ticking because Nicole was suspicious and Megan was the type to spiral if she felt like she was losing control of information. The next move was the one that set everything else in motion. And I need a whole separate update to explain it properly because it involves Megan's dad, Candace, and a conversation that Harrison had with him that went in a direction nobody expected, including us. Update 2 coming. And for everyone asking, wait, yes, Anton gets what's coming to him too. Just not yet. Harrison cooked her dinner, watched a movie on the couch, knowing everything. That composure is either incredibly disciplined or mildly terrifying, and honestly, it's both. Most people would crack within hours, or Harrison went home and played loving boyfriend so well that Megan didn't suspect a thing, and the filing system detail kills me. They called this man a loser with no ambition, and he has 4 years of payment receipts organized better than most accountants. You know who keeps receipts like that? People who've been underestimated their whole lives and learned that paper trails are armor. But the family angle is what makes this a systemic betrayal. The brother got Anton his job, the family invited Anton to Thanksgiving, sat him across from Megan while Harrison ate dry turkey next to a teenager. They weren't just tolerating Anton, and they were auditioning him as the replacement while Harrison paid rent. Every person in this family treated Harrison as temporary infrastructure, and he was quietly moving his toolkit out one box at a time while they all still thought he was the pushover who'd never leave. Update 2. Okay, so I left off at the conversation Harrison had with Megan's dad, Candace, and I need to set this up properly because this is where the whole thing starts to spiral in multiple directions at once. Harrison decided to go see Candace at his house on a Sunday afternoon. Megan was out with Nicole doing whatever, so the timing worked. Harrison showed up and told Candace he wanted to talk man-to-man about the future of the apartment and his relationship with Megan. Candace was confused at first because Harrison had never come to him solo before. It was always family dinners or holiday stuff where Harrison was basically background furniture. And that's not me being dramatic, that's literally how they treated him. At Thanksgiving last year, Megan's mom seated Harrison at the far end of the table next to Megan's teenage cousin, while Anton, who was there as Megan's brother's coworker and quote-unquote family friend, sat right across from Megan. Harrison told me about that dinner and how he just sat there eating dry turkey while Anton and Megan's family joked around like Harrison didn't exist. He swallowed it because he loved Megan. But now he had the screenshots and he wasn't swallowing anything anymore. So Harrison sits down with Candace and starts by asking him directly whether he thinks Harrison is good enough for his daughter. Just like that, no buildup. Candace tried to dodge it, gave some generic response about how every father wants the best for his daughter, and it's nothing personal. Harrison pressed harder. He asked Candace why Anton had been invited to Thanksgiving. Candace got uncomfortable and said that was his son's coworker situation and had nothing to do with Megan. Harrison asked if Candace knew Anton was Megan's ex. Candace said yes, he knew, but that was years ago and adults can be civil. Harrison asked if being civil included Anton putting his hands on Megan at Nicole's birthday party in December. Candace told Harrison he was overthinking things, and maybe he should focus on working harder and providing a more stable future instead of worrying about who talks to who at parties. And right there, that comment about working harder, that's what Harrison had been waiting for. Because that confirmed what the group chat messages already showed. Candace's family looked down on Harrison because of his job, his income, his car, everything. They never said it to his face at full volume, but it leaked out in comments like that. Harrison told me that when Candace said that, he almost pulled out his phone and showed him every screenshot right there. But he held back because the plan wasn't ready yet. What Harrison did do was ask Candace a very specific question. If Harrison decided to move out of the apartment, what would happen to the lease? Candace got visibly tense because he understood immediately what that meant for him as co-signer. He told Harrison that leaving wasn't an option, that he'd signed a commitment, and that walking away from responsibility was exactly the kind of thing he was talking about. Harrison just nodded and left. Now here's where a new problem exploded. That same week, Nicole finally confronted her sister about the iPad. Nicole's sister, under pressure, admitted that she'd seen the group chat but swore she didn't tell anyone. Nicole didn't believe her and went through her sister's phone. She found the Instagram DMs to me, the ones with every single screenshot attached. Nicole immediately told Megan that Fletcher has all the screenshots and probably showed Harrison everything. I found out because Nicole's sister texted me from a friend's phone since Nicole had taken hers, absolutely panicking, saying she was sorry but Nicole had found out. I called Harrison immediately. We had maybe hours before Megan went into damage control mode with her entire family. Harrison was at work when I reached him. He left his shift early and went straight to the apartment. Megan was already there and she was not calm. She started in on him the second he walked through the door, asking him if Fletcher showed him the chat, if that's why he'd been acting weird, if that's why he went to talk to her dad. Harrison told me he just stood there and let her talk for about 10 minutes because he wanted to hear her try to spin it. And she did try to spin it. She told him the messages were taken out of context, that girls vent to each other and say things they don't mean, that the stuff about Anton was exaggerated and nothing physical ever happened, that Nicole was being dramatic in the chat to show off, and that Megan loved Harrison and had chosen to be with him, not Anton. Harrison let her finish and then asked her one question. Why did the chat include specific dates and locations where she met up with Anton if nothing physical happened? Megan started backtracking. She admitted she'd seen Anton a few times but said it was just talking, just closure from their old relationship, and that it meant nothing. Harrison asked her why she called him boring and a loser in the chat. Megan said she was frustrated at the time and didn't mean it. Harrison asked why her entire family seemed to prefer Anton over him. Megan lost her composure and told him that maybe if he had more going for him, her family would respect him more. And the second she said it, she tried to take it back, but Harrison was already done listening. He told her he was moving out. Not eventually, not after discussing it. He was done. Megan immediately shifted to the lease, said he couldn't just leave because her father co-signed and it would affect him. Harrison told her that was exactly right, and that maybe her father should have thought about that before treating the guy paying half the rent like he was disposable. Megan started calling her dad while Harrison walked to the bedroom and grabbed the last bag he'd pre-packed and hidden in the back of the closet. By the time Harrison got to my apartment that night, Candace had already called him 4 times. Megan had called twice. Her brother had sent Harrison a long text telling him he was being selfish and immature, and that real men don't run from their problems. Harrison didn't respond to any of them yet because we were moving to the next phase. Because here's what none of them knew. Harrison walking out and leaving Candace exposed on the lease was only the first pressure point. The second one involved Anton directly, and it had to do with something we'd found buried in those group chat screenshots that I haven't mentioned yet. Something that connected Anton and Megan's brother in a way that Megan's brother definitely did not want their workplace knowing about. And the third pressure point? That was the family dinner that Megan's mom had already scheduled for the following Saturday. A dinner Harrison was still technically invited to. A dinner we had no intention of missing. Final update coming. This is where it all goes down. Candace telling Harrison to work harder, while Harrison literally pays the rent on the apartment Candace co-signed, while Candace's daughter is sneaking off with the guy Candace's son is fraudulently clocking in at work. This man is sitting on a financial grenade with his name on it, lecturing the only person keeping the pin in. Delusional. And Megan's confrontation was a masterclass in trickle truth. Out of context. Girls just vent. Nothing physical. Just closure. She tested each lie one at a time, seeing which one Harrison would accept so she could stop there. And when nothing works, the mask falls off completely. Maybe if you had more going for him. That is the real Megan. Every apology before that was choreography. People don't reveal a new side when they're cornered. They reveal the side they've been hiding. And the brother texting Harrison about how real men don't run, while committing time fraud at his own job to help Anton cheat. The lack of self-awareness in this family could power a small city. Final update. This is the one you've been waiting for. Buckle up because Saturday happened, and I'm still processing it. First, let me explain the Anton and Megan's brother situation I teased in the last update. Buried deep in those group chat screenshots, there were messages where Megan casually mentioned that her brother had been covering for Anton at work. Not small stuff. Anton had been skipping shifts and calling out constantly because he was spending time with Megan during hours he was supposed to be on the clock. And Megan's brother was logging Anton in and marking him present on the time system. Megan joked about it in the chat, said her brother was Anton's biggest wingman. Her brother was risking his own job to help Anton sneak around with his sister, and everyone in that chat thought it was hilarious. Harrison and I realized that Megan's brother wasn't just passively aware of the affair. He was actively facilitating it while simultaneously texting Harrison about being selfish and immature. The hypocrisy was unreal. So here's what Harrison did the week before the family dinner. He printed out 3 specific sets of screenshots. Set 1. Every message where Megan mocked Harrison, called him a loser, said she was only staying for the apartment. Set 2. Every message confirming the physical affair with Anton, including dates and locations. Set 3. Every message about Megan's brother covering Anton's shifts at work. Harrison put each set in a separate envelope and brought them to my apartment. We went over the plan for Saturday 4 times. The family dinner was at Megan's parents' house. Megan's mom had planned it weeks ago before everything blew up, and nobody had canceled it even though the situation was tense. Megan had been texting Harrison all week trying to get him to talk, alternating between apologizing and accusing him of blowing things out of proportion. She kept saying the family dinner could be a chance to sit down and work things out like adults. Harrison responded just enough to confirm he'd be there. He even told Candace on the phone Thursday night that he wanted to come to dinner and talk about the lease situation and figure out a path forward. Candace sounded relieved, probably thinking Harrison was going to fold like he always did. I drove Harrison to the dinner. I wasn't invited, but I was parked down the block, and Harrison had me on a live call the entire time so I could hear everything. He walked in around 6. Megan, her parents, her brother, and this is the part that made everything perfect. Anton were all there. Megan's family had actually invited Anton to this dinner, the dinner that was supposed to be about fixing things with Harrison. When Harrison saw Anton sitting at the table, he told me later he almost laughed because they'd made it too easy. Everyone sat down, and Megan's mom tried to start things off by saying this was a family discussion and everyone needed to be calm and respectful. Candace immediately launched into the lease situation, told Harrison that walking out was irresponsible and that he'd signed an agreement and he needed to honor it. Harrison let him talk. Megan's brother chimed in and said Harrison was being dramatic and needed to grow up. Harrison let him talk too. Megan sat there looking at Harrison like she was waiting for him to cave. Then Harrison asked Candace directly if he'd invited Anton tonight. Candace said Anton was there as a friend of the family, and it wasn't relevant. Harrison asked Megan if she wanted to tell her parents why Anton was actually relevant, or if he should. Megan told Harrison to stop and said this wasn't the time. Harrison said it was exactly the time because everyone at this table had been lying to him for months and he was done being the only person in the room who was expected to be honest. He pulled out the first envelope and slid it across the table to Candace, told him to read it. Candace opened it and started going through the screenshots of Megan calling Harrison a loser, saying she only stayed for the apartment, mocking him with her friends. Megan's mom read over Candace's shoulder. Megan immediately tried to grab the pages, but Candace held them away from her. Megan started yelling at Harrison that those messages were private and he had no right. Harrison ignored her and slid the second envelope to Megan's mom. The affair evidence. Every date, every location, every reference to Anton. Megan's mom started reading and her face changed completely. She turned to Megan and asked her if this was real. Megan started crying and saying it wasn't what it looked like, that the messages were exaggerated, that she and Anton were just friends. Anton, who had been sitting there silently this entire time, started telling Megan to stop talking. Harrison waited until Megan's parents were both reading the affair messages, and then he turned to Megan's brother and handed him the third envelope personally, told him this one was his. Megan's brother opened it and saw every screenshot of himself covering Anton's shifts, logging him in when he wasn't there, facilitating the affair on company time. His face went white. He told Harrison he couldn't show this to anyone. Harrison told him he wasn't planning to show it to anyone yet. but that if Megan's family tried to hold the lease over Harrison's head or come after him in any way, those screenshots would go directly to their employer's management. Not a threat, a promise. The room went sideways. Candace stood up and started yelling at Megan, asking how she could do this after everything they'd done to set her up with a stable living situation. Megan's mom was yelling at Anton, asking him how long this had been going on and whether he had any shame. Megan's brother was yelling at Megan for putting his job at risk by talking about the shift coverage in a group chat. Megan was on the floor at this point, sitting against the kitchen cabinet, sobbing and begging Harrison to stop, saying she'd fix everything. She'd end it with Anton, she'd do whatever he wanted. Anton grabbed his phone and threw it against the dining room wall and stormed toward the front door. And Megan's brother grabbed his arm and told him he wasn't leaving until they figured out what to do about the work situation. Harrison stood up, looked at every single person in that room, and told them that he'd be formally notifying the apartment management company on Monday that he was terminating his share of the lease. He told Candace that whatever financial consequences came from that were between Candace and his daughter, not Harrison. He told Megan she had 30 days to figure it out. Then he walked out the front door, got in my car, and we drove away. On the drive back, I asked him how he felt. He said he felt like himself for the first time in 4 years. And yeah, Megan's family called him a loser who deserved it. But I sat there smiling, because we'd already been planning exactly what just happened. Every single piece of it. That's it. That's the story. No forgiveness. No reconciliation, just consequences. 3 envelopes. This man walked in like a prosecutor presenting exhibits A, B, and C to a jury that didn't know they were on trial. Mockery screenshots to Candace because he's the money guy and needed to see what his cosign was subsidizing. Affair evidence to mom because mom's processed betrayal on a character level. Work fraud directly into the brother's hands so he could feel his own hypocrisy in physical paper form. Harrison didn't just expose them. He gave each person a personalized mirror, surgical, and they invited Anton to the reconciliation dinner. They were so confident Harrison would fold that they didn't even bother hiding the game. Anton wasn't a guest. He was a victory lap they were taking before the race was over. And look at what happens when the room implodes. Look at what each person is actually mad about. Candace is mad about the apartment. Mom is mad at Anton. The brother is mad at Megan for being careless in the group chat. Not a single person in that room is angry about what they did to Harrison. Nobody says we treated him terribly. They're all furious about consequences hitting them. They're not upset about doing the wrong thing. They're upset about getting caught. And Harrison just stands up. No screaming, no tears. Monday, I notify management. 30 days, good luck. Gets in Fletcher's car and says, I feel like myself for the first time in 4 years.